Hi guys, and welcome back to Braid School. Today we're going to cover a basic parting map for medium braids. We're also going to talk briefly on moving scalps and why sometimes your parts are not always going to be perfect, because it's not you, sis. A lot of times it's your client's scalp. So let's get into this video. So if you still struggle with basic parting maps, this is the video for you. This video we're going to cover the basic box parting for medium-sized braids. In the future I will be posting one for triangles and for circle parts or C parts. So if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do that right now and hit that notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I will be walking through this row by row, so make sure you save this video and come back to it whenever you're actually practicing or working on a client. That way you know exactly what to do and you can follow it step by step. You can also reference the parting one-on-one video, which I will link in the cards above. That video covers basic points of reference and rough draft parting, so it's very beneficial to go back and watch that one so that you get an idea of what we're doing today. In this case, today we're doing it row by row. For standard medium size, we're going to be doing 2 rows in the back below the ear. So typically I will part from the top of each ear to the other top of the other ear and then split that row in half in the back. And then the first row will either get 3 braids, 4 braids, or 5 braids, depending on the way the client's hair tapers in the back. So sometimes the hair from the top of the ear to the nape is pretty long, or it tapers into a V, and you have to start with 3, work yourself up to 4, and then 5. But in this case, she had enough hair to do 4 on the first row. So to make sure we have even distribution, I located the center of the nape of her neck, and then I put 2 braids on each side of that center. Most of you who have been following me for a long time know that I like to work from the center out, because a lot of times folks' hairlines will be different from side to side. So if you work from one side to the other, a lot of times you'll end up with uneven boxes. So working from the center out works the best. So here is the second row. It is from the top of each ear, and what we're going to do is we're going to split that into 5, because we're going to brick lay those boxes on top of the 4. So I like to do that by starting with the middle box and then working my way out. And lo and behold, as I was working through all of this, I realized that she had some soft spots, and it would be the perfect opportunity to discuss with you guys soft spots, soft scalps, moving scalps, and what does that mean for us braiders. So there really is no official definition in the braiders world for soft scalps or moving scalps. So I'm going to give you my take on it based on my experience. So essentially, when I see a soft scalp or a moving scalp, that just means to me that there's excess skin on the scalp. It's not taut, it moves, it's very, very soft. It's a lot like when a newborn scalp is really soft because the skull has not completely closed. It's a lot like that. A lot of us have scalps that move, but some are more than others. I've seen soft scalps on full heads. I've seen scalps that have just spots that are really, really soft. I've even had clients who have had surgeries on their scalp, and so that causes it to move quite a bit as well. It's not usually a sign that anything is wrong. That's just your genetic makeup. But for a braider, this can be almost a nightmare, especially when you're trying to get perfect parts. And sometimes you don't even notice it until you get halfway through the head and you get to a spot similar to this one that you see right here. And there's really nothing you can do about it, because when you start to put tension on that part, it's going to start to move. And in this case, because she's getting classic box braids, there's going to be a lot more tension than we would normally see with knotless braids. Now, what I definitely don't want to do is put more tension on her hair and scalp by trying to get the most perfect part. So what I like to do is part the hair in a resting position without pulling it too taut, because at the end of the day, when the hair starts to grow out, it will grow out into its resting position. So don't beat yourself up about it. Some heads you can part with a sewing needle and it still won't be straight, because either their scalp is too soft or they have high density hair, or both. There's not much you can do but just do your best. This is also why a lot of heads are not the most photogenic. Like, they're not the best for photos and posting on like your feeds and whatnot, because they just don't present that well. But if you guys follow me, you know I post any and all. So if you got low density hair, high density hair, moving scalp, it's getting posted. You gonna see it, sis. Okay, so back to the parting map. What I did was I located the center from the top of her head to the back, and you see where the center lands in the middle of that middle box on the second row right there. This is just a rough draft guide for me to figure out where I need to start my boxes for each row. So this is the first one on the left side. I created 5 boxes on that first row. And then instead of going to the other side of the head, I'm going to go ahead and start on the next row. And I just created a center part right down the middle of that box to start the brick lay, and then I'm going to work my way out towards the temple of the head. And so I've got 5 more boxes there. Keep in mind, we want to keep those lines on top of each other so that the braids lay in between each other and they're not laying on top of each other. This prevents what I like to call helmet braids. So now that I got the 2 rows started on the left side, I'm basically just going to mirror the right side with the same amount of boxes. This is how I can keep track of what's even and what's not. Now this is where I also like to mention that sometimes people's hairlines are different on each side. So sometimes they will look different. Or you may have 4 boxes on one side and 5 on the other because they may have not enough hair in their hairline, or you don't want to put enough tension on that hairline, and it just makes more sense. And here's some more examples of soft spots that I found on the side of her head here. There was really nothing I could do because she kind of had a little bit of spacing, like a little bit of gapping in her hair density right there. So it didn't matter how much I parted it, it was going to have that little off-centered piece right there. So luckily it's in the back, you can't really see it that much, but you guys know the braider in us is just so OCD. We want to go back and redo it, but we would be here all day trying to do that. So we're gonna keep it moving, you guys. So now that we're on row 3 above the ear, I have a better bird's eye view of the placement of that particular row. So I was able to do the entire row as opposed to doing a semicircle, but you can do either or, whatever works for you. And again, I started from the middle and worked my way out. And I want to point out that this is one of those hairline situations where she didn't have enough hair to support that braid in the front. So I swooped it into the braid so that we wouldn't have a lot of tension on her hairline. For some reason, a lot of people get hung up on these last 2 rows. It's the very top of the head at the crown. And I'm going to give you my 2 cents on how I structure this, because every head is different, of course. And sometimes if you start with an odd number, you end up with an even number at the top. But in this case, you see how we have a center part right down between the last 2 rows and that 3rd row. I really hate having a center part that far down, all the way down to the 3rd or 4th row, because it just looks weird. It looks like you have a cut right down the middle of your head. So I always make sure that I have 1 box either on the 3rd row or the 2nd row from the top, right dead in the middle, so that you don't have that gap in the middle of the head and the back. So if that 3rd row had a box right down the middle, I wouldn't do a semicircle on the next row. I would just cut these sections into 4s, going straight to the front and the back. If you can follow my comb there, that's what I would have done. But because we have that middle part, I'm going to do a semicircle on that next section so that I can get a center box right down the middle. Again, starting from the center of the head and working my way out to the front of the head, I can get some even boxes on each side. And I just cut right down the middle of that 3rd row box there to make sure that I had a box in the middle of the head. Now we're on the last 2 rows. We're just gonna slice it right down the middle. If you have to get in front of your client to make sure that it's even, do so. Do not be afraid. And then check to make sure that they kind of match up on each side. Because sometimes if you're not paying attention, those 2 rows at the top can be uneven. And of course, we still want to continue our brick lay to make sure that each braid falls in between the braids below them. This is also a reason why I like to work from one side to the other, because if you work on one side, all you're going to do is mirror the other side. Now, if you haven't checked on us here in Texas, we are living our best hot lives here. It is super hot. So this beauty wanted her braids really short, but she wanted some curls on the end. So to make sure that I got those curls nice and tight, I use the string pull method. I know I have a video about that somewhere on this channel, but I may have to do an updated one. If you want one, just make sure you comment below and I got you, don't worry. And yes, my good sis is masked up because these numbers is up out here and we got to do what we got to do to stay safe. But overall, you can tell she loved her look. So as always, you guys, if you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and share it with a friend. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our uploads. Remember, we've got more tutorials coming on these parting maps. And thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next video. Bye.